Update, brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300. Manx Radio's Update with Andy Wint.
First of all, good evening, it's 5:30. This is Update for Tuesday, 30th of January 2024 from Manx Radio. 30 minutes looking at the latest news on the island. Background to that news, we've got sport and business and Sea Watch and travel updates. And the newsmakers in person this evening, the latest on the disposable vape ban building up Middlemarch, perhaps before 2025. Daphne Caine MHK back at her spiritual home. Is our organ donation legislation being ignored and boosting football for females on the Isle of Man?
Man Benham for all your business and legal needs.
But first of all, at 29 minutes ahead of 6 o'clock, the Update News headlines. Fastamai, Siobhan Fletcher.
Fastamai. In the last hour and a half, Braddon Bridge has fully reopened. Work has been carried out over the past 3 weeks on the Peel to Douglas Road to improve the carriageway there. The DOI has issued a statement thanking everyone for their patience whilst works were underway. The Laff campsite will continue to operate under new management next year. It was announced earlier today that the current operators would be shutting the site in June after TT, but the landowners, Ballamore Farms, say they understand how important the local facility is and have vowed to reopen for the next season. The dates for the 11th Camera Isle of Man Beer and Cider Festival have been announced. Each year, more than 2,000 visitors head to the Villa Marina in Douglas. This year's event will take place from the 11th to the 13th of April. Turning to the international news, the DUP leader says there could be a return to power sharing in Northern Ireland within days, following its 2-year boycott. It's agreed to settle a dispute over post-Brexit trade arrangements and says it's secured the removal of checks and customs paperwork on goods coming from elsewhere in the UK. A man threatening people inside homes in southeast London and who reportedly had a crossbow has been shot dead by police there. Neighbours near Bywater Place in Surrey Quays report hearing screams just before 5 this morning. And there's going to be an urgent review into the decision by prosecutors to accept a manslaughter by diminished responsibility plea by Nottingham killer Valdo Calacane. Emma Webber, the mum of one of his 3 stab victims, says she was ill-prepared and never thought the charge would be anything other than murder. They're your headlines. News at 6.
Secure tomorrow today with Man Benham's guidance on powers of attorney and more. Manx Radio Weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
Goromaya, thank you. Siobhan from the Ronaldsway Met Office. There's a strong wind warning currently, a gale warning later for the North Irish Sea, state of sea. Currently slight or moderate, rough overnight. Dry and clear weather this evening on the Isle of Man. A moderate northwesterly backing southwesterly, overnight minimum 5 degrees. And for Crane, Wednesday dry and cloudy and a strong to near gale force southwesterly, with some rain after lunch. Up to 11 degrees tomorrow. Wind veering northwesterly, easing through the evening, down to 6 through the night for Thursday. Dry and bright to start with, then cloudy and a moderate to fresh westerly. Daylight maximum 9 degrees. Tides on the way out. Low water 28 minutes before 9. High tide 2:30 a.m. Sunrise 8 minutes past 8. Low water 25 to 9. There's a delay on the Dublin flight tonight. The Manxman is heading into Douglas Harbour right now, and tomorrow morning's 8:45 to Heysham will depart at 7:30 if it goes.
Manx Glass and Glazing are able to offer an emergency out-of-hours boarding up service. Call 491918.
The Manx government's yet to confirm if it's planning to follow the UK's move to ban disposable vapes here on the Isle of Man. A new law restricting the selling of vapes to under 18s is currently awaiting royal assent. Vape store owner Giles Day has previously criticised disposable vapes.
The one thing as a society that we still fail to learn is that prohibition doesn't solve the problem. All it does is it creates more problems. It's extremely expensive for the taxpayer in terms of policing. It ends up ruining a lot of young people's lives, and And when that happens, when they become convicted of a crime, it then marginalises that person. And over the period of their life, what inevitably will happen is they'll become more reliant on the state. And all it does, it's just going to create a new black market for organised crime. And when that happens, as we saw with synthetic cannabis back in the day when it was sold in head shops, there was never any problems. As soon as it was banned, spice came on the market. And if you watch any documentaries about prisons in the UK, you can see what a terrible, terrible problem that is. From an economic perspective, I don't think we can afford to ban them, because the cost of policing it and the effect that it will have on young people's lives going forward, it's just too expensive. And it isn't going to solve the problem either. I think it's more about regulation of social media companies, for one, because that's where all the marketing to young people's been happening. Education as well. That's obviously parents and schools and things like that as well. But the thing is with kids, and we've all been kids, is that when something's trendy and all your mates are doing it, in order to be fitted and not be ostracised by your peers, you just join in. But I think kids that are addicted to nicotine, if you know anything about addiction, someone telling you to stop isn't going to make you stop. So they're still going to be looking to try and get that access to the addictive drug. And if it's not through licensed, regulated entities, then they'll go to the black market.
Construction work on a multi-million-pound project to redevelop the Middlemarch site in Douglas could begin by the end of the year. Plans for a 3-storey leisure complex and 250-space car park were submitted at the end of last year and are currently under consideration. The project architect is John Bell.
The application is going through the process. We've had a few consultations back, which we're obviously dealing with and liaising closely with the planning officers. So, yeah, it's going quite well at the moment. We're working very closely with them, and also we're sort of being asked to work with some of the other developers in the area just to sort of provide some modelling and just make sure that the whole master plan sort of comes together, really, for the whole of that area, which is quite interesting.
Now, the original plan was a 250-space multi-storey car park, 3-storey leisure complex as well. The Palace Hotel were proposed as the anchor tenant, occupying, I think, 2 floors of the leisure complex. Is that still the case?
That is still the case, yes. We've not really looked too heavily into the budgets, purely we're working on those still, but until we got the final design, because as you can imagine, planning is still in discussion, so still bits that we have to tweak and change. So until we get the final design, it's hard to finalise the budgets. With the application proposals, not too many. It's more a case of just understanding the highways implications, how that's going to work. Potentially also the energy. There's a substation on the site as well. So there's little bits like that we're just sort of picking up, standard planning items that we pick up as we go through. But the whole project's been very positively received in general. So I think overall, yeah, hopefully we should be getting some sort of decision, hopefully in 4 or 5 months' time, if not earlier. I think the aim would be to start on site this year, which is very exciting. You'll be looking at probably a 2-year project overall by the time it's concluded. So I would think if you work it backwards, probably about 2026 completion.
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates.
Garth MHK says she hopes to bring some positivity to help deliver on government's ambitious tourism strategy. Daphne Caine MHK has been appointed to the Department for Enterprise as a political member with responsibility for Visit Isle of Man and motorsport. And she told Manx Radio she hopes to help champion the Isle of Man's heritage offering for visitors.
Well, I feel like it's my spiritual home in a way. I've always had a massive interest in heritage and the visitor economy, having spent 10 years in the former Department for Tourism and Leisure, and I hope that I will bring some positivity to deliver on the very ambitious tourism strategy that they published a couple of years ago. The Isle of Man has so much variety to offer all kinds of visitors, and from my previous experience and also knowing next week I think the Isle of Man's going to welcome more than 50 members of the Guild of Travel Writers, and I think that small style conference or corporate events is a way to build the visitor numbers in the shoulder seasons when, the Isle of Man is still a beautiful place. I was out walking over the weekend myself down at the chasms around Laxey, and I think that the biggest publicity we've had actually is as a hidden gem, and the more we can promote the Isle of Man and its realistic offering, so that for those people who are interested in what the Isle of Man has to offer, whether that's in the heritage side or the Victorian transports network that we have, unmatched anywhere, or for more modern things, or even fine dining increasingly. I just feel that the tourism industry brings so many benefits to island residents as well, in improving the output for those hospitality industries, as well as the various visitor experiences that we have to offer.
Festa Mai, it's 20 to 6 this Tuesday evening on Manx Radio, live from Douglas in the Isle of Man. Is a former MHK justified in saying his private members bill designed to make organs for transplant more readily available not being given the attention it deserves? Martin Perkins' measure, the Human Tissue and Organ Donations Bill, got royal assent in 2021, but it's still waiting for the secondary legislation needed to implement it. Cabinet Minister Kate Law-Brennan, MHK, says it's complicated.
In order to have this private members bill in its full implementation, there is a huge amount of work, not just in terms of secondary legislation, codes of practice, but also making sure that you've got the regulatory regime developed and in place to the satisfaction of the UK Human Tissue Authority. So it's really complex. There is a commitment to progress this.
Yeah, you mentioned quite a few times it's a private members bill. Does that take away from it? Does that lower it down the list a bit?
I think that it's not really that, because once there is, I guess there is that commitment in statute, certainly for a part of government to do something, that requirement is there. So by no means has it been forgotten. I think that perhaps what does happen though is there becomes like a lack of appreciation as to the implications of that. In our case, in terms of public health, it impacts in terms of Cabinet Office and public health carrying out this work as a regulatory function to implement the bill in terms of budget, resource, people, money, liaising with the UK.
The point was made. I mean, £45,000 for a year of dialysis, that would be money saved if there could be a kidney transplant, for instance, for that particular patient. I
just really want people to understand that as it stands at present, there is no barrier to people choosing to donate their organs. Part of the campaign and the passion behind having this private members bill was to raise awareness for that very point.
Sea Watch with the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company.
Motor vessel Manxman left Heysham at 2:05. She's safely into Douglas Harbour, going astern onto the link span now. Leaving this evening at 7:45, getting to Heysham at 11:30. The overnight departure's 2:15, back to Douglas at 6 tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning's 8:45 has been rescheduled and will now depart at 7:30. Check in no later than 6:45, but it's still subject to possible disruption or cancellation. To give the sailing every opportunity to take place, a final decision will be made at 6 o'clock by the master. Obviously, if it goes, it'll be coming back. If it doesn't, it won't.
Follow the Steam Packet on Twitter for the latest sailing information.
The Isle of Man FA is planning another project aiming to continue boosting girls' football on Manx shores. The FA's Women's and Girls Football Development Officer is Simon Elson. He explains what they have in mind and what he thinks of the opportunities available for female players now.
The biggest school day is an FA initiative where we're trying to get every single girl that wants to play football to be given the opportunity to play on the 8th of March 2024. And then they'll go from there. They'll then hopefully go into clubs and carry on playing football. So basically that's what it's about. But we're trying to get schools, play groups, anybody who has females are playing to basically come together. It can be clubs, it could be children's centres, nurseries, it can be anyone. They just need to sign up. They'll have assets, posters. They'll also be given little ideas, how to make it enjoyable. But the main thing is they sign up and basically just let the girls kick a football and enjoy it, have fun. That is the main thing, to have fun. And if any parents, guardians or anyone wants to get involved afterwards with a local club or one of the programmes we run, just reach out. The game is looking for volunteers, as are all sports.
How do you, as the Women's Development Officer, compete with netball and hockey to get girls into your sport?
All we can do is look after, ourselves, give the opportunities, show the girls the pathway. I encourage the girls to do other sports as well, because then it becomes multi-sports. You can transferable skills from other sports into girls football, as long as they're active and they're doing something. That's what I want, but preferably obviously I want them to be able to play football, and we have got a pathway from 5 all the way up to the senior citizens who can play walking football if they wish to do so. That's where we're at the moment, which is really good. We have actually grown with the help of some of the clubs, the schools, the parents. This is, everyone's involved, not just the FA. It's a joint effort by everyone.
Manx Radio Business Briefing.
At 16 minutes before 6, shares in Auction Technology Group, the digital marketplace business, flew up by a fifth as the art and antiques online marketplace operator said it expected annual results to be in line with expectations after an 11% increase in revenue for the first 3 months of the year. And for a full daily market report, go to ramseycrookall.com. We get on the Isle of Man the majority of our food from the UK, and 2/3 of food in the UK comes from the EU. The fresh produce trade across Europe is facing two big challenges as Red Sea blocks make long-distance shipping difficult and new post-Brexit rules come into force in the UK. Shipments of fresh fruit from Italy, Greece and other southern European countries have been delayed in reaching Middle Eastern and Asian markets due to attacks on shipping in the Red Sea by Houthi rebels. Companies have rerouted shipments around South Africa, adding 3 weeks to their journey, but some crops are rotting on the way. Experts have warned that if the disruption continues, meat and grain deliveries could be also hit, according to Politico. Meanwhile, in the UK, prices for fresh fruit and veg are likely to rise as paperwork requirements come into force for EU imports of animal and plant products. Variety, availability and shelf life will be affected, producers have been warned. Border inspections begin in April.
The Stock Market Report, brought to you by Ramsey Crookall.
UK and European markets were higher as investors digested preliminary fourth quarter gross domestic product figures released by the Eurozone. The euro steadied, oil rose and gold rose, supported by a slightly weaker US dollar. The numbers from Ramsey Crookall at the close in London: the FTSE 100 up 0.4% at 7,666. The DAX in Frankfurt up 0.2% at the close, 16,974. Short time ago in New York City, the Dow Jones Industrial up 0.06%, 38,358. The Nasdaq Tech Stocks Index is down almost 0.4% at 15,572. The S&P 500 in Chicago almost flat, but down 0.02%, 4,927. In the exchange markets, the British pound sterling trading at $1 26.7 cents, €1 16.9 cents, and 23 South African rand 87.6 cents. In commodities, gold's up 0.2% at $2,035 per troy ounce, and a barrel of Brent crude up 0.8% at $82.57.
You've got an investment plan?
Yeah, Mike set it up.
But don't you need loads of money to do that?
Not this one. It's called Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, and you pay in monthly as little as £100. So it's like saving regularly, really helping us invest in the future. For a house, or the kids' education.
£100 a month? I could easily do that.
You should. The sooner you start, the better.
Invest in your future with as little as £100 a month. Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, the island's investment specialist for 75 years. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
This is the most listened to Isle of Man news source, and Manx Radio's Update is the Isle of Man's most downloaded news podcast.
Earlier this month, Isle of Man Meats had to recall a number of beef products after a machine breakdown at the meat plant led to delays in the production line. The Environment, Food and Agriculture Minister was quizzed over the incident and the amount of waste it caused in the House of Keys today. But Claire Barber, MHK, says exact figures and an answer as to the cause of the fault will have to wait.
In regard to the amount of the loss, I am happy to commit to sharing the value with honourable members on conclusion of our discussions with our insurers. There were no consumer returns registered and therefore no refunds to customers, but there have been also some refunds issued. In terms of the 8-week stagger, the plant operates in the same way as any other business with a booking in process, whether that be an optician, hairdresser or window cleaner. The customer phones up to make a booking and there are a given number of slots available each day that can be allocated in advance to assist with planning. In order to assist with this, and due to the hard work of the management and operational team of the meat plant, the number of slots available has increased significantly in the last 6 months, and these slots have all been filled. The fact that we are not seeing the waiting time decrease would indicate to me that we're displacing exports, which I hope honourable members would agree is a good news story. I'm pleased to be able to share that over the past 6 months we've seen a 16% increase in throughput of cattle and a 17% increase in throughput of sheep, with the only limiting factor on sheep numbers being supply and available slots being unfilled each week at present as we have passed the peak of production.
For an animal to be reared, slaughtered and then simply thrown away is really not a situation any of us should condone. Could the Minister provide assurances to us that no malicious administration has taken place?
Thank you, and I would absolutely echo the thoughts of the Honourable Member, and I think as would everyone on our board and everyone working within our plant and certainly the wider agricultural community. In terms of any malicious practice, we do know that there were issues with machinery. The root cause of that failure has yet to be determined, but a full investigation into that is continuing, and I can assure Honourable Members that any concerns that may have been raised have been reported to the appropriate authorities, and it would therefore be inappropriate for me to comment further.
Manx Radio Sport.
That's to my sports editor, Rob Pritchard.
That's to my good evening. Starting with athletics, and Isle of Man athlete Sarah Aston has smashed an island record, which had previously stood for more than 32 years. Whilst competing in Seville in Spain on Sunday, she set a new Isle of Man women's half marathon benchmark in a time of 1 hour, 11 minutes and 40 seconds to finish 12th in the race overall. Her time eclipses the previous official record of 1 hour, 14 minutes, 29 seconds set by Brenda Walker at the Great North Run in 1991. In darts, a strong outing for the Isle of Man squad has seen them finish second during an international event held on Ireland at the weekend. The Isle of Man played host to Republic of Ireland, Guernsey and Jersey as all four nations faced off in the 2024 Ireland's International last Friday to last Sunday. The Manx players took second spot in the men's, women's and overall categories, only beaten by Republic of Ireland, who won all three titles. In martial arts, a Manx Jiu-Jitsu club has secured 3 more medals whilst competing in the UK and Europe. Gracie Barrett Isle of Man fielded 5 competitors across the European IBJJF Jiu-Jitsu Championship in Paris and the Grappling Industries competition in Liverpool last week. The French event saw Gracie Barrett's Hayley Curtis, Colin Everton and Lucas Borchuk in action, with the standout success coming from Borchuk, who secured a bronze medal. Elsewhere, fellow club members Nick Baker and Phil Cowgill were involved in the Merseyside competition, with both going on to bag silver medals in their respective classes. And in cycling, Matthew Bostock and Ruby Oakes secured the top honours during the latest edition of the Hamper cycling race held on Sunday. In a field of competitors which once again included numerous riders competing at professional levels, Bostock took overall victory ahead of fellow pro competitor Max Walker in second and Adam Kelly in third. Elsewhere, Oakes produced a dominant ride to win the women's race and crossed the line in 19th overall. Making up the women's podium was Sophie Smith in second, whilst third spot went to Florence Griffin.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Inbound at Ronaldsway, the 4:20 flight from Dublin Quay will be coming in at 6:10 tonight. Then it's the 10:08 Loganair from London City and the 5:08 Loganair from Liverpool returning patient transfer plane. So, outbound tonight is the 6 o'clock Loganair to Liverpool and then the delayed 4:45 to Dublin, going out at 25 to 7 on the roads. Braddon Bridge is finished and go. You can drive around as much as you want. Temporary lights in Douglas at the bottom end of Summerhill for gas repairs. Also on Victoria Road near Linden Grove for work on the road surface. Hillside Avenue closed to Circular Road for adjacent office window replacement. And a section of Switzerland Road's closed for construction work. Still those temporary lights on Lord Street between the bus station and Duke Street for scaffolding work. In Colby, a phase closure on Ballakill Ferrick for water main work. In Onken, temporary lights on King Edward Road between Groudle and the A2 for trial pit work. Kiandrockard Road in Andres got phase closures for water main work. South of Kirk Michael, temporary closures on the Ballalai Road for water main work. And temporary lights at the bottom of the Ballamoda at the Grenaby Road junction for patching work. North of Port Erin, Serby Mill Road's closed for drainage work. Temporary lights on Ramsey Road, Peel near Battery Lane for cable work. Temporary lights on West Kimmerock Road in Bride for ditching work. And off-road, the Heritage Trails closed to the 15th of March between Crosby and Glenvine for duct insulation.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at Quayside.
Rates are being increased in Port Erin to be able to provide a realistic budget and services to residents, and plans to move more than £50,000 out of reserves. Chair of Port Erin Commissioners, Godfrey Egie, says residents shouldn't be burdened with unnecessary costs.
We've had to increase the rates. We were very conscious to keep the increase as low as possible. We've released funds from reserves to maximise, and we're trying to maximise the potential for the commercial lets, Fire Depot, Fire Station, Cozy Nook, and we're conscious that rising costs to the board, like utilities, wages, refuse, materials, means that some increase is inevitable. But we're really trying to do the best for the village, so we've sort of had to do a compromise where we've increased them, but we've increased them as low as we reasonably can this year. It's important that we don't burden our ratepayers and anyone really with any unnecessary costs if we can avoid it. There are a few projects that were carried over from last year still, and they're sort of important ones. We cut back on some of the nice to haves. We won't be getting any more floats this year, expanding the floats, for example, but we will be trying to get ladders fixed on them. We're still looking at increasing some land that we're hoping to get to in future, maybe have social housing on or whatever, but is utilising to the village. So we're still providing the library, which of course comes at a cost. These sort of services are never money-making things, that they're important amenities to the village and to the whole south of the island, really. And obviously with costs for the local swimming pool, committed some money into doing maintenance and improvements on the Cosy Nook rather than the big scheme, which wouldn't be a great time to do it. We've been registered building and our new incoming tenants. We've agreed some improvements there, and it's all looking really good for the summer.
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300.
A Chinese national's been excluded from the Isle of Man for 5 years after admitting slapping and kicking his wife at Douglas Courthouse. For Manx Radio, Tessa Hawley.
Nian Chao Yang, formerly of Central Promenade in Douglas, had originally denied assaulting the woman and had been due to stand trial. However, at Douglas Courthouse, the 36-year-old changed his plea to guilty. The court heard witnesses had seen Yang having an altercation with his wife in a car park at 3:30 p.m. on the 3rd of January. He struck her in the face, causing her nose to bleed. Yang, who doesn't speak or read English, was assisted in court by an interpreter. The court heard the pair had been married for 13 years and Yang was highly intoxicated at the time. She also told the court her client had been working on the island for around 3 months and had been sending money back to his parents in China, who were looking after one of his children. At a previous hearing earlier this month, it was revealed that the company Yang was working for had revoked his visa following the incident, and his wife had subsequently returned home. At that time, Yang's advocate had applied for bail so that he could return to China to work ahead of any trial taking place. His family are essentially destitute at the moment, she'd added. That application was refused by Deputy High Bailiff Rachel Braidwood, who told Yang that she had very little faith that he'd return to the Isle of Man. Today, Yang's advocate told the court that the defendant had struggled with being on remand at the prison and staff were using Google Translate to communicate with him. It's had quite a negative impact on his mental health, she added. His only desire is to essentially go back to China. Sentencing Yang to 6 weeks in custody, Deputy High Bailiff Rachel Braidwood told him this was a domestic abuse incident involving an assault on your wife. Arrangements to remove Yang from the island on his release from prison will be made. The court was told a family member has offered to pay for his onward travel.
That's it for Update Tonight, compiled from the resources of Manx Radio's news department. Thanks to newsreader Siobhan Fletcher, producer Amy Griffiths. Countryside's on the way after 6 with Simon and Kerry, and Chris Kinley with the greatest hits at 6:30.
WINT